Hey friends. So in my last tutorial where I did some back to the wall handstand drills, I mentioned that I do a lot of the times use more of a belly to the wall approach for handstand. And I like belly to the wall because it helps you take away this jumping aspect, which is very important when you're learning handstand. But for a lot of people, can bring in that fear factor and they just don't jump high enough or hard enough, and they maybe stop themselves with the heels of their hand instead of letting the weight transfer to their fingers, and they never even get up to the handstand position to start working on that float. So doing some of these belly to the wall drills can help you avoid the jumping aspect by helping you walk up the wall in one way or another, help you start to understand the stacking of a line of hips over shoulders over wrists, and can also help you play with balance a little bit, taking away that fear factor. Not entirely, obviously, because if we have this fear in handstand, which is perfectly normal, then it's still going to be there and present. However, perhaps we feel a bit more in control if we're able to slowly walk up and to stop at any point that we feel comfortable. And that's something that I do want to stress is, even if you're not comfortable going all the way up into handstand in any of these drills, just starting the process and seeing where it takes you each day is still going to get you the benefit of the drill. And actually, in some of these drills, if you're not all the way in handstand, you might actually be working harder and getting more muscles firing, building a little bit more strength if you're not in that straight line. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You may actually find that the drill is harder from a strength perspective and an endurance perspective than once you get up into straight handstand. All right. So 2 drills that I use all the time for belly to the wall. One's a little bit scarier than the other. We'll start with the less scary version. And I'm sure y'all have seen me teach this drill before. It is my favorite handstand drill. My very, very favorite handstand drill. It can also be done using something tall and sturdy like a couch or a big table or a really heavy chair. I like the wall though, because the wall definitely doesn't go anywhere. So we start by measuring how far we are from the wall. This is just a gauge, and there's a really important aspect that I want to cue you in here. So I see a lot of times people saying like, oh, okay, you put your feet on the wall, and then you look at where your hips are, and you replace your sit bones with your hands. So something like this. For most people, if you replace your sit bones with your hands are going to be too far away. And in this drill, it is better to be too close to the wall than too far away. And I'm going to say that again because it's really important. It is better to be too close to the wall than too far away. So kind of like we talked about with the back to the wall handstand drills where people just feel like, oh, if I'm too close to the wall, that's scary for some reason. But actually it's a lot scarier when you're further from the wall. Because if you put your hands too far away from the wall, and you walk up the wall, and I'll show you how to do this in a second, but let's say we walk up the wall and our hands are too far away, and we're in this L, I'm not going to balance because look at my shoulders. They're not stacked over my wrist. And I'd have to, in order to stack them, lean, do a little bit of the splits, put it into my low back, lose my core integration, or maybe even do this thing and like kick off the wall. And one of the things I'm trying to avoid doing is this kicking action. So, always better to be too close to the wall. Why? Because you can just bend your leg that's on the wall. It's fine. There's no rule against bending the leg that's on the wall, and that doesn't mean that leg is inactive. It's still very active even though it's bent. So yeah, you can measure where your hips are, and then go ahead and put your hands a good foot closer to the wall. Even if you're like, wow, that's really close, it's fine. It's going to be fine. So my hips were like there. I'm going to put my hands back here. Shoulder distance apart, slightly turned out, pressure in the fingertips, pushing through the inner edge of the hand to take some pressure off the outer wrist. Send my hips up into this tiny, ugly downward facing dog. And if your hamstrings are screaming at you, just bend your legs. Not important. So then, once I feel like my hands are on something nice and stable, and this B mat is fabulous because it's nice and sticky and also providing some support for my wrists, I step 1 foot about hip height. Hip height is not here. That's going to be where you want to. You're going to want to step your foot really high. It's not down here. It's right behind my sit bone, right there. The other foot swings in. Now, this is a great place to stay. See how my shoulders are still behind my wrists? This might be where you hang out. If you're like, this is scary, this might be where you hang out. You can walk your hands a little bit further if you want to give yourself space, but remember, better to be too close to the wall than too far away. If you feel comfortable sliding the second leg through, reach it up towards the sky like you're shoving your heel into the ceiling. Push the ground, down with the inner edge of the hands and the fingertips, like you're trying to hold yourself up. See how much I just grew there? The tendency is we sag into our shoulders, which can put a lot of pressure on some of the more delicate aspects of your shoulder over time. So really push away. Push, push, push the ground away. Nice engaged legs. Pull the navel into the spine, and watch what I do with my ribs here. So here I'm kind of sagging into my low back. I want to think about what would happen if someone were to sucker punch me. Pull the navel in, ribs come in. Do tone the glutes a little bit. You don't have to clench them, but do squeeze them. Just a little bit. Reach with that top leg. This is a great place to be. It's a great place to practice falling because I can think about sending my hips past my shoulders and landing with bent legs to absorb the shock. Notice when I did that, I didn't yank my hands off the floor because there was a lot of weight in the hands, and if we just spring our hands off the floor time and time again, we can lead to some little just strains and sprains of the wrist, which is what we want to avoid because this is a lot on the wrist already. So that L, or that bent leg L, right, because the leg on the wall was bent, is a great place to work on posture. It's a great place to work on breathing in your handstand. Maybe what's your head doing, not being too far out, looking mostly with your eyeballs. It's a great place to work on your hands, activity of the legs, pulling the navel towards the spine, getting the hips over the shoulders. If you want to work on float, this is a great place to work on float without kicking off the wall. And again, you saw, if I'm too far from the wall with my hands, I do have to almost like kick off the wall to get some float. So that's why I want to be closer so that I don't have to do that. If I'm nice and close, same, step, reach. All I have to do, keep reaching to the sky with the top leg, keep pushing the ground away, growing out of my shoulders, transfer the weight to my fingers. Notice how they claw the mat. I'm not pushing at all with the foot on the wall. All I'm thinking about doing is curling it in. Oh gosh, that's scary, curling it in. And you know what? You don't have to find the balance here. That's not what it's about. It's just exploring and experimenting with your fingers. How does it feel to hold the handstand here? How does it feel to have the hands be in control of where the hips are? Of course, if you want to do that with both feet against the wall in more of a pike position, be my guest. For most people, that's a little bit harder. You usually need to send the hips actually past the shoulder a bit to counterbalance the weight of the heavy legs on the other side. But an L handstand allows you to kind of have that counterbalance back and forth of your accelerator and your brake leg that we talked about when we did the back to the wall. So what's the scarier version of this? Well, belly to the wall is a good place to practice straight up handstand if that's something that interests you, and to find that line of ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, wrists, which a lot of times people think they're in a straight up and down handstand. And they're not quite. They're in a little pike because for most of us, or a little banana back because for most of us, it's a little easier to balance like that. And again, this is only important if straight handstand is important to you. But if you feel comfortable with doing the drill like I just showed you, you may walk the hands in closer and closer and closer and closer to the wall as you walk the feet up, up, up until you are, boom, flat against the wall. And again, this is scary for most people. But you can fall out of it the same way that you did from this L handstand. It's just for most of us, when we're in that close proximity to the wall, it feels a little bit more sketchy. So that's something like this. You may, again, start with the hands close, walk the feet up, except this time they both go a little bit higher. You can stop here. This is a great place to be in this little pike. For me, I like to walk my hands closer when my legs are in a bit more of a staggered position because I feel more secure. And then I can start to slide the leg up as I walk closer and closer and closer. And you decide how close you get to the wall, right? Once you're here, push, push, push the ground away, claw there with your fingertips, take the head slightly in. Maybe you decide to walk closer, maybe not. Again, your choice. It's a great place to work on activity of the legs. You'll probably have to point your toes like I'm doing. Toning of the glutes, not clenching, because then look at what happens to my legs. When I clench my glutes, my legs externally rotate a lot. But when I tone them and lift, then I get more activity at the hips. Pull the navel towards the spine. Keep breathing. If you feel like it, you can also practice dismounting and falling safely in the pirouette or cartwheel fall from there. So, hope these were helpful in adding to the back to the wall, belly to the wall drills. I think the wall is a wonderful prop to use in learning handstands. You could also use either of these drills for forearm stand. Headstand, I wouldn't really recommend it because it's not fun to fall over. And we don't really recommend kicking or jumping in headstand. If you like more of this, I have ebooks on handstand and handstand pressing, as well as online workshops on authenticmovements.com. Check the link in my profile bio. Everything is there. And I also have a tutorial page at Study with Steph G. There's lots of little 1-minute tutorials on there about a lot of things, all different levels. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll be back next time. Thanks.